Welcome to Reading the Bible with Pastor. Today we're on Genesis chapter 21, and we read about the birth of Isaac, which God had promised to Abraham. But where does that leave Ishmael, the other son of Abraham, and his mom, Hagar? We'll read about that. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age at the time of which God had spoken to him. That was, in a year's time, the last time that God had visited him, he said he would have a child. And that was chapter 17, verse 21. Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. And Abraham circumcised his son Isaac when he was 8 days old, as God had commanded him. Abraham was 100 years old when his son Isaac was born to him. And Sarah said, God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me. And she said, who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. When God had promised a son to Abraham, both Abraham and Sarah had laughed, and Isaac's name means he laughs. Before, when they heard this promise, they laughed in disbelief, but now they laugh in joy of the promise fulfilled by God. We'll continue reading with verse 8. And the child grew and was weaned, and Abraham made a great feast on the day that Isaac was weaned. But Sarah saw the son of Hagar the Egyptian, whom she had bore to Abraham, laughing. So she said to Abraham, cast out this slave woman with her son, for the son of this slave woman shall not be heir with my son Isaac. That's because she was worried that the firstborn son might receive the promise and inherit all of Abraham's possessions. And the thing was very displeasing to Abraham on account of his son. But God said to Abraham, be not displeased because of the boy and because of your slave woman. Whatever Sarah says to you, do as she tells you. For through Isaac shall your offspring be named. And I will make a great nation of the son of the slave woman also, because he is your offspring. So Abraham rose early in the morning and took bread and a skin of water and gave it to Hagar, putting it on her shoulder, along with the child, and sent her away. And she departed and wandered in the wilderness of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the child down under one of the bushes. Then she went and sat down opposite him, a good way off, about the distance of a bow shot. For she said, let me not look on the death of the child. And as she sat opposite him, she lifted up her voice and wept. And God heard the voice of the boy. And the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, what troubles you, Hagar? Fear not, for God has heard the voice of the boy where he is. Up, lift up the boy, and hold him fast with your hand, for I will make him into a great nation. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. And she went and filled the skin with water, and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy, and he grew up. He lived in the wilderness, and became an expert with the bow. He lived in the wilderness of Paran, and his mother took a wife for him in the land of Egypt. We see that even though Ishmael was not the promised son of Abraham and Sarah, but rather a son through Hagar, God still gives that same promise of a nation through Ishmael for Abraham because of Abraham's faithfulness to God. And so even here at the brink of death, God saves Hagar and Ishmael so that they may live and be a nation. This always reminds us that God has a plan for us. Even though things look tough, He has a plan for us. His plan is always for our salvation through His Son and with His death on the cross. We'll continue reading with verse 22. At that time, Abba Melek and Phicol, the commander of his army, said to Abraham, God is with you in all that you do. Now Abba Melek was the king that had taken in Sarah as a wife into his harem and given back to Abraham. And he wanted to have peace with Abraham, and we'll read about that here. Now therefore swear to me here by God, that you will not deal falsely with me, or with my descendants, or with my posterity. But I will deal kindly with you, so you deal with me, and with the land where you have sojourned. And Abraham said, I will swear. When Abraham reproved Abba Melek about a well of water that Abba Melek's servants had seized, Abba Melek said, I do not know who has done this thing. You did not tell me, and I have not heard of it until today. So Abraham took sheep and oxen and gave them to Abba Melek, and the two men made a covenant. Abraham set 7 ewe lambs of the flock apart. And Abba Melek said to Abraham, What is the meaning of these 7 ewe lambs that you have set apart? He said, These 7 ewe lambs you will take from my hand, that this may be a witness for me that I dug this well. Therefore that place was called Beersheba, because there both of them swore an oath. So they made a covenant at Beersheba. Then Abba Melek and Phicol, the commander of his army, rose up and returned to the land of the Philistines. Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and called there on the name of the Lord, the everlasting God. And Abraham sojourned many days in the land of the Philistines. We see here today that the great, wonderful promise of God that God would provide for a son for Abraham and Sarah in Isaac. They received a son as promised. And that promise continues to be shown in Ishmael and Hagar, is that Ishmael will be a great nation also. The promise of a Savior through the line of Abraham comes through Isaac. And we'll continue reading that as we continue through Genesis. We'll pick up next time with Genesis chapter 22, and please subscribe to the channel so that you can view more.